In the harsh winter of 1878, the remote wilderness of Alberta, Canada, became the backdrop for one of the most chilling tales in Cree history. Swift Runner, a former Northwest Mounted police officer and a respected member of his community, returned to his village alone after the snow thawed. When questioned about his missing family, he revealed a horrific story of cannibalism and possession by a malevolent spirit known only as the Wendigo. This skeletal creature with glowing eyes and an insatiable hunger for human flesh haunts the darkest corners of Algonquian folklore. It is said to possess those who succumb to cannibalism, transforming them into insatiable monsters. This malevolent being is more than a myth. It's a force that has been encountered and feared for generations. Join us as we delve into the origins of this eerie spirit, explore the psychological horror of Wendigo psychosis, and uncover the role this legend has played in Indigenous cultures and contemporary stories. The Wendigo waits in the shadows, a reminder of the thin line between humanity and monstrosity. The Wendigo legend emerges from the rich oral traditions of the Algonquian-speaking tribes, whose stories echo through the vast, dense forests of North America. These tales, passed down through generations, tell of a malevolent spirit that embodies the darkest fears of winter, famine, and starvation. The Wendigo is not just a monster, but a symbol of the ultimate taboo: cannibalism. Imagine the long, harsh winters experienced by these tribes, where survival often hung by a thread. Food was scarce and the cold was relentless. In this desperate environment, the Wendigo lurked in the shadows, waiting to prey on those who strayed from the path of humanity. This malevolent entity, known for its insatiable hunger for human flesh, was more than a cautionary tale. It was a dire warning against the extremes of human desperation. The Wendigo's roots lie deep within the cultural and spiritual beliefs of the Algonquian peoples, including the Cree, Ojibwa, and Innu. These tribes believed that the Wendigo could possess a person, driving them to commit the unthinkable act of cannibalism. The Wendigo was often described as a giant, gaunt figure, skeletal and emaciated, with glowing eyes that reflected the cold, unyielding hunger within. This creature was said to roam the forests, its breath visible in the frigid air, a constant reminder of the ever-present danger of succumbing to starvation and madness. The Wendigo's association with winter and famine made it a powerful symbol of the struggle for survival in the unforgiving wilderness. The legends told of its transformation from a once human figure into a grotesque monster, forever cursed to wander in search of its next meal. As the tale of the Wendigo spread, it became a central figure in the mythology of the Algonquian-speaking tribes, its chilling presence serving as both a deterrent and a reminder of the thin line between humanity and monstrosity. This legend, deeply rooted in the harsh realities of life in the northern forests, continues to haunt the imagination, a testament to the enduring power of cultural myths and the fears they embody. This malevolent spirit is not just a vague figure in folklore, but a well-defined entity with distinct features and behaviours that further amplify its terrifying presence in the stories told by the Algonquian tribes. The Wendigo, a figure shrouded in dread, is described in chilling detail across Algonquian folklore. Its physical form alone is enough to inspire nightmares. Picture a creature so emaciated that its bones push through its pallid, desiccated skin. Its skeletal frame appears barely able to support its gaunt body, and yet it moves with an unnerving, predatory grace. Its eyes, glowing with a malevolent light, pierce through the darkness, reflecting an insatiable hunger. These eyes, cold and relentless, seem to follow you, their eerie luminescence betraying the endless craving that consumes the Wendigo. Its mouth, filled with sharp, jagged teeth, is permanently twisted into a grotesque grin, forever yearning for its next meal. The Wendigo's emaciated body is a stark representation of its eternal hunger. Despite its skeletal appearance, the creature is incredibly strong, driven by a ceaseless desire to devour human flesh. Legend has it that the Wendigo grows larger with every victim it consumes, but no matter how much it eats, it remains perpetually starved. This paradox of insatiability defines its existence, a monstrous cycle of hunger and consumption. Beyond its horrifying physical form, the Wendigo's behavior adds another layer to its terror. It is a relentless predator, stalking the forested wilderness in search of human prey. Its insatiable hunger drives it to commit atrocities that defy human comprehension. This monstrous appetite is not merely a need for sustenance, but a deep, unnatural craving that can never be quenched. The Wendigo is said to possess an almost supernatural cunning, luring victims into the depths of the forest with eerie calls that mimic human voices. Once it has ensnared its prey, it strikes with terrifying speed and ferocity. The creature's insidious nature is reflected in its ability to instill a sense of dread in those who encounter it, a fear that paralyzes and consumes just as surely as the Wendigo itself. Those who succumb to the Wendigo's curse find themselves transformed, their humanity eroded by the same insatiable hunger. They become part of the Wendigo's legend, forever cursed to roam the forests, driven by an endless desire for human flesh. This transformation is as much a psychological torment as a physical one, a descent into madness and monstrosity. In every account, the Wendigo embodies the ultimate horror, a creature driven by an eternal hunger, forever unsatisfied, forever hunting. Its existence is a chilling reminder of the depths of human desperation and the monstrous consequences of breaking the most sacred taboos. Embedded within the chilling tales of the Wendigo were vital moral lessons. The stories warned of the dire consequences of giving in to the darkest human impulses. To eat human flesh was not just an act of survival, but a surrender to a malevolent force that would strip away one's humanity, transforming them into a monstrous being with an insatiable hunger. These cautionary tales were more than folklore. They were essential tools for promoting community survival and cohesion. By instilling a deep fear of the Wendigo, the stories reinforced the importance of mutual support and sharing during times of scarcity. They taught that the survival of the individual was intrinsically linked to the well-being of the community. In these legends, the Wendigo represented the dangers of extreme individualism and the breakdown of social bonds. The creature's insatiable hunger was a metaphor for unchecked greed and selfishness, which could lead to the destruction of the entire community. By emphasizing the horror of becoming a Wendigo, the stories encouraged people to prioritize the collective good over personal desperation. The moral fabric woven into the Wendigo legend was clear. In the face of adversity, one must never forsake their humanity. The community must come together, sharing resources and supporting one another to ensure everyone's survival. Those who broke this sacred trust, succumbing to cannibalism, were warned that they would pay the ultimate price, not just death, but a cursed existence as a Wendigo, forever hungry and never at peace. The legend of the Wendigo thus became a powerful narrative tool, shaping the behavior and values of the Algonquian peoples for generations. Beyond its role as a cautionary tale, the Wendigo held profound spiritual significance within the cosmology of the Algonquian-speaking tribes. This malevolent spirit was not merely a creature of the night, but a supernatural force intertwined with the very essence of nature and human behavior. The Wendigo was a spectral entity that embodied the darkest aspects of existence, serving as a reminder of the thin line between humanity and monstrosity. The Wendigo was thought to be a harbinger of death and destruction, its appearance signalling the onset of famine and relentless winter. As such, it became a symbol of nature's unforgiving side, a reminder of the brutal conditions that shaped the lives of those who told its stories. The Wendigo was also seen as a manifestation of the spiritual dangers lurking within the human soul. It was believed that the spirit of the Wendigo could possess individuals who exhibited extreme greed, selfishness, or a propensity for violence. This possession would strip away their humanity, leaving behind a monstrous being driven by insatiable hunger. Thus, the Wendigo served as a spiritual caution against succumbing to these destructive traits, highlighting the importance of maintaining moral integrity and community bonds. In many stories, the Wendigo's presence was felt long before it was seen. The forests would grow eerily silent, the air heavy with an oppressive sense of dread. Hunters would find their prey vanished, leaving behind only strange tracks and an unsettling feeling of being watched. This atmospheric tension underscored the Wendigo's connection to the natural world, suggesting that it was an intrinsic part of the environment, a shadow that moved silently through the trees. The Wendigo's spiritual significance extended to its role in rituals and ceremonies. Shamans and spiritual leaders would conduct rites to protect their communities from the Wendigo's malevolent influence. These rituals often involved invoking the power of benevolent spirits to counteract the Wendigo's curse and restore balance. Through these practices, the Wendigo legend reinforced the importance of spiritual vigilance and the need to uphold cultural traditions that safeguarded the community's well-being. In the cosmology of the Algonquian tribes, the Wendigo was not just a monster, but a spiritual force that reflected the darker aspects of both nature and humanity. Its legend served to instill a sense of respect and fear for the natural world, reminding people of the dangers that lay beyond the safety of their communities. The Wendigo's presence in these stories was a constant reminder of the delicate balance between survival and destruction, humanity and monstrosity. In the unforgiving winter of 1878, a Cree man named Swift Runner returned to his village in northern Alberta, Canada. Once a respected member of his community and a former Northwest Mounted Police officer, Swift Runner had ventured into the wilderness with his family, only to emerge alone, gaunt and haunted. When questioned about the whereabouts of his wife and children, Swift Runner initially offered vague and unconvincing explanations. But the villagers, sensing something deeply wrong, pressed further. Under mounting pressure and the weight of his own guilt, Swift Runner finally confessed to a horrific truth. He had murdered and consumed his family. Swift Runner's confession was not merely a story of cannibalism driven by starvation. He claimed that he had been possessed by a malevolent spirit, the Wendigo, which had driven him to commit these unthinkable acts. This revelation sent shockwaves through his community, for the Wendigo was more than a legend. It was a real, palpable threat that haunted their darkest fears. The trial of Swift Runner was swift and unrelenting. He detailed how, as the winter grew harsher and food became scarce, he felt an overwhelming presence taking control of his mind and body. The spirit of the Wendigo, with its insatiable hunger for human flesh, whispered insidious thoughts, breaking down his will to resist. Isolated and desperate, he succumbed to the Wendigo's curse, turning on his family in a frenzy of bloodlust. The court, horrified by his account, found Swift Runner guilty of his crimes. In 1879, he was executed by hanging, his story serving as a grim reminder of the Wendigo's power and the depths of human desperation. The tale of Swift Runner remains one of the most infamous cases of Wendigo psychosis, a chilling intersection of folklore and reality. But Swift Runner's story is not unique. Throughout history, there have been other documented cases of individuals claiming to be possessed by the Wendigo spirit, driven to cannibalism by a combination of psychological torment and cultural beliefs. In the early 1900s, Jack Fiddler, an OG Cree shaman known for his ability to confront Wendigos, faced charges for his role in the deaths of people he believed were transforming into Wendigos. Fiddler's community revered him for his spiritual prowess, trusting him to protect them from the Wendigo's curse. However, to the outside world, his actions were seen as cold-blooded murder. Fiddler and his brother Joseph confessed to killing at least 14 people, all of whom they believed were on the verge of becoming Wendigos. Their confessions were a blend of deep-rooted spiritual beliefs and the harrowing realities of life in the remote wilderness. Despite their convictions, many in their community stood by them, acknowledging the difficult choices they faced to protect their people. These historical accounts underscore the profound impact of the Wendigo legend on Indigenous communities. They reveal a complex interplay between cultural beliefs, psychological distress, and the brutal conditions of life in the northern forests. The Wendigo was not merely a creature of myth, but a force that could drive people to the brink of madness, its legend rooted in the very real fears of starvation and isolation. Was it really a malevolent spirit that drove these men to kill, or is there another explanation for their behavior? One more clinical, but no less horrifying. The concept of Wendigo psychosis straddles the boundary between cultural belief and psychological distress. Modern psychology and anthropology offer perspectives that attempt to unravel the mystery behind this terrifying phenomenon. From a psychological standpoint, Wendigo psychosis is considered a culture-bound syndrome. This term refers to mental health disorders that are specific to certain cultural groups, influenced by the beliefs and social norms of that culture. In the case of Wendigo psychosis, the Algonquian-speaking tribe's deep-seated fear of the Wendigo, coupled with the extreme conditions they faced, created a perfect storm for this disorder to manifest. In the relentless cold of winter, with dwindling supplies and the ever-present threat of starvation, the mind can become a battlefield, where the lines between reality and myth blur. The stories of the Wendigo, with its insatiable hunger and horrifying transformation, were not just tales but warnings deeply ingrained in the community's psyche. For some, these tales became their reality, their minds succumbing to the fear and despair that the Wendigo represented. Anthropologists studying these cases have noted that Wendigo psychosis often occurred during times of severe famine. When individuals faced extreme hunger, the psychological stress could trigger episodes where they believed they were turning into a Wendigo. The fear of becoming a monster, driven by cultural narratives, could push them into a state of madness, where they might actually engage in cannibalism, believing it was the only way to satisfy their unnatural hunger. These beliefs were so powerful that they could override a person's sense of reality. The transformation into a Wendigo, though not physically real, became a psychological truth for those afflicted. They experienced intense cravings for human flesh, driven by the fear and guilt of becoming what they most dreaded. This phenomenon highlights the profound impact of cultural beliefs on the human mind, demonstrating how deeply embedded myths can shape behavior and perception. Modern psychologists also explore the concept of dissociative disorders in relation to Wendigo psychosis. Under extreme stress, individuals may experience dissociation, where they feel detached from their own thoughts, feelings, and actions. In the context of the Wendigo legend, this dissociation could manifest as a belief that they were possessed by an external force, driving them to commit acts they would otherwise find abhorrent. The intersection of cultural belief and psychological distress in Wendigo psychosis provides a haunting glimpse into the power of the human mind. It reveals how deeply our environment and cultural narratives can influence our mental health, pushing us to the brink of our sanity. But what if the Wendigo was more than just a source of madness and monstrosity? What if it was a real, malevolent spirit lurking in the shadows, waiting to claim its next victim? In the spiritual beliefs of the Algonquian-speaking tribes, the Wendigo was not merely a symbol of madness, but a supernatural entity with profound significance. This malevolent spirit was woven into the very fabric of their cosmology, representing the dark side of nature and the human soul. The Wendigo was viewed as a harbinger of doom, a spectral force that embodied the harsh, unforgiving aspects of the natural world. It was believed that the Wendigo roamed the forests, especially during the coldest, most desolate winters, preying on those who found themselves isolated and desperate. Its presence was a dire omen, signaling the arrival of famine, death, and despair. In the cosmology of the Algonquian tribes, the Wendigo was a manifestation of imbalance and chaos. Nature, in its purest form, was revered and respected, but the Wendigo represented a perversion of this natural order. It was a reminder of what could happen when the delicate balance between humanity and the environment was disrupted. The Wendigo's insatiable hunger and grotesque form were seen as punishments for those who violated the sacred laws of nature and community. The spiritual significance of the Wendigo extended to its connection with human behavior. It was believed that extreme greed, selfishness, and cruelty could invite the Wendigo's presence. Those who acted with disregard for their community, hoarding resources or committing acts of violence, were thought to be at risk of falling under the Wendigo's curse. This belief served as a powerful social tool, encouraging cooperation and mutual support to fend off the malevolent spirit. In many stories, the Wendigo's approach was heralded by an eerie silence in the forest, the sudden absence of animal sounds, and an oppressive feeling of dread. Hunters and travellers would tell of an inexplicable sense of being watched, of unseen eyes following their every move. This atmospheric tension was more than just a literary device. It was a reflection of the profound respect and fear the tribes held for the Wendigo's supernatural power. Shamans and spiritual leaders played a crucial role in protecting their communities from the Wendigo. They performed rituals and ceremonies to ward off its influence, invoking the protection of benevolent spirits and seeking to restore balance. These practices were not merely symbolic, but were deeply rooted in the tribe's understanding of the spiritual world and their place within it. The Wendigo also featured prominently in rites of passage and cautionary tales, its legend serving as a moral compass. Young members of the tribe were taught the stories of the Wendigo to instill in them the values of humility, generosity, and communal responsibility. The fear of the Wendigo's curse was a powerful deterrent against behaviours that could threaten the well-being of the entire community. In the broader context of indigenous spirituality, the Wendigo was a symbol of the ever-present struggle between good and evil, harmony and chaos. It was a reminder that the natural world, though beautiful and bountiful, could also be harsh and unforgiving. The Wendigo's legend underscored the importance of living in harmony with nature and each other, respecting the fragile balance that sustained life. The transformation into a Wendigo is one of the most harrowing aspects of this legend. It begins with a whisper, a creeping sense of dread that infiltrates the mind and soul. Those who are isolated and desperate, faced with the brutal realities of starvation, become vulnerable to the Wendigo's insidious influence. Possession by a Wendigo spirit is said to occur when an individual is overtaken by extreme greed or consumed by the thought of cannibalism. The spirit, like a parasite, latches onto the darkest corners of the human psyche, feeding on fear and despair. Once possessed, the individual starts to experience an insatiable hunger for human flesh. Their humanity begins to erode, replaced by the monstrous cravings of the Wendigo. The physical transformation, though rarely witnessed, is described in chilling detail by those who claim to have seen it. The afflicted person's body begins to change, becoming gaunt and skeletal. Their eyes, once human, take on a supernatural glow, reflecting the malevolent spirit within. Their teeth grow sharper and their skin stretches taut over their bones, giving them a horrifying, emaciated appearance. This metamorphosis is a grotesque reminder of the Wendigo's insatiable hunger and the curse that drives them. The transformation into a Wendigo was a fate worse than death, a descent into madness and monstrosity. But the Algonquian tribes were not powerless against this malevolent spirit. They had developed a series of rituals and practices designed to protect themselves from the Wendigo's curse and, in some cases, to cure those afflicted. Shamans and spiritual leaders played a crucial role in these protective measures. They were the keepers of ancient knowledge, trained to navigate the perilous realms of the spirit world. When a community feared the presence of a Wendigo or suspected someone was under its influence, they would call upon these healers to intervene. One of the most common rituals involved the use of sacred herbs and chants. The shaman would prepare a mixture of herbs known for their protective properties, such as sweetgrass, cedar, and sage. These herbs were burned, and the smoke was believed to cleanse the area of malevolent spirits. The shaman would chant ancient incantations, calling upon benevolent spirits to ward off the Wendigo and restore balance. In more severe cases, where an individual was believed to be transforming into a Wendigo, the rituals were more intense. The afflicted person would be brought to a sacred space, often a secluded area in the forest or a specially prepared lodge. Here the shaman would perform a healing ceremony that could last several days. The ritual involved drumming, singing, and the use of powerful symbols and amulets to draw out the Wendigo spirit. The community would gather around, lending their energy and prayers to the ritual. This collective effort was crucial, as it reinforced the bonds of community and the shared resolve to protect one another from the Wendigo's curse. The process was grueling and emotionally charged, as the shaman and the afflicted person fought a spiritual battle against the malevolent force. There were also preventative measures taken to protect the community from the Wendigo. During harsh winters, when the threat of starvation was most acute, the elders would remind everyone of the Wendigo's legend and the importance of sharing resources. They would hold communal feasts, ensuring that no one went hungry and that the bonds of community remained strong. The shamans would create protective amulets, which were worn by hunters and travelers venturing into the wilderness. These amulets were believed to shield the wearer from the Wendigo's influence, keeping their mind and spirit safe from the malevolent entity. The amulets often contained sacred symbols and materials imbued with the shaman's blessings and the collective prayers of the community. Despite these efforts, not all could be saved. When someone was too far gone, completely overtaken by the Wendigo spirit, the community faced a heart-wrenching decision. They might perform a banishment ritual, driving the afflicted person into the wilderness to prevent further harm. This was a last resort, a desperate measure to protect the many at the cost of one. The rituals and protective practices of the Algonquian tribes reflect a profound understanding of the spiritual world and a deep-seated fear of the Wendigo. These traditions were not just about combating a monster, but about maintaining the delicate balance between humanity and the supernatural forces that surrounded them. The legend of the Wendigo did not fade with the passing of time. Instead, it has persisted, echoing through the years with a chilling resonance. Even today, there are whispers of its presence, stories of modern encounters that blur the line between myth and reality. In the dense, shadowy woods of northern Minnesota, a hunter named Tom had always found solace in the solitude of nature. But one winter evening, his usual sense of peace was shattered by an encounter that would leave him forever haunted. Tom recounted his story with a trembling voice, his eyes filled with lingering fear. As the sun set and the forest grew darker, Tom set up his camp near a frozen lake. The air was still, the silence almost oppressive. He had just settled into his tent when he heard it. An eerie, guttural growl that sent shivers down his spine. Grabbing his flashlight and rifle, he stepped out into the cold night, scanning the tree line for any signs of wildlife. What he saw instead was something out of a nightmare. Standing at the edge of the clearing was a gaunt, humanoid figure. Its eyes glowed with an unnatural light, piercing through the darkness. The creature's skeletal frame was barely covered by rotting flesh, and it seemed to move with a grotesque, unnatural fluidity. Tom's breath caught in his throat as the figure began to move toward him, its eyes locked onto his. Paralyzed by fear, Tom could only watch as the creature advanced. Suddenly it let out a blood-curdling scream, a sound so horrific that it echoed through the forest and seemed to vibrate deep within his bones. In a desperate bid for survival, Tom fired his rifle, the sound of the shot tearing through the still night. But when he looked again, the creature was gone, vanished into the shadows as if it had never been there. Shaken and terrified, Tom packed up his camp and fled the forest, vowing never to return. His encounter was more than just a story. It was a chilling reminder that some legends might hold more truth than we care to believe. Tom's story has been well documented, even appearing on Destination America's Monsters and Mysteries in America. Far to the north, in the remote forests of northern Ontario, another terrifying encounter would soon unfold. A seasoned paranormal investigator named Mark took on a case that would test the limits of his courage and belief. An abandoned cabin, known locally as the Wendigo's Lair, had been the site of numerous eerie occurrences. Locals spoke of strange noises, disappearing animals, and sightings of a gaunt figure with glowing eyes. Determined to uncover the truth, Mark ventured into the woods one crisp autumn day. The cabin stood in a small clearing, its wooden walls weathered and cracked, exuding an aura of neglect and decay. As Mark approached, he felt a chill that had nothing to do with the weather. Steeling himself, he entered the cabin, flashlight in hand. Inside, the air was thick with an oppressive sense of dread. Mark began his investigation, his equipment picking up faint growls and whispers that seemed to come from the very walls. As he moved deeper into the cabin, the atmosphere grew more sinister. The temperature dropped, and he could see his breath forming clouds in the frigid air. Suddenly, the silence was shattered by a loud, resonant growl. Mark turned, his flashlight beam catching a fleeting glimpse of something skeletal and monstrous. The figure's glowing eyes met his for just a moment before disappearing into the darkness. Heart pounding, Mark followed the sound, determined to capture evidence of the supernatural. As he reached the back room, he felt a presence behind him. Turning slowly, he was confronted by the Wendigo in all its horrifying glory. The creature stood tall and gaunt, its hollow eyes glowing with malevolent intent. Mark's equipment crackled with static, the readings going haywire. The Wendigo let out a guttural snarl, and Mark felt a wave of cold wash over him, paralyzing him with fear. In a desperate attempt to escape, Mark stumbled out of the cabin, the Wendigo's growls echoing in his ears. He ran through the forest, not daring to look back until he reached his vehicle. The evidence he collected that night, recordings of the growls, the chilling EVP sessions, and the physical sensations he experienced, left no doubt in his mind. The Wendigo was real, and it was still out there, lurking in the shadows. Mark's story has been well documented, appearing on Destination America's Haunted Case Files. These stories from paranormal investigations are more than mere tales of fright. They are contemporary accounts that add a modern dimension to the ancient legend of the Wendigo, reminding us that some horrors are timeless and ever-present. The advent of the internet has given people a platform to share their most terrifying experiences with the world. Online forums, subreddits, and YouTube channels have become repositories of modern folklore, where users recount their encounters with the unknown. Among these stories, the Wendigo continues to loom large, its legend evolving with each new account. In the vast remote forests of Canada, a chilling tale emerged on Reddit's Our Paranormal subreddit. A user named Northern Wanderer recounted a harrowing experience during a camping trip with friends. As the group settled around their campfire, the dense forest around them grew unnaturally quiet. The usual sounds of wildlife were replaced by an eerie silence that set their nerves on edge. That night, as they tried to sleep, strange noises began to emanate from the darkness. Low growls and rustling leaves seemed to come from all directions, as if something was circling their campsite. One of the friends caught a glimpse of a gaunt, skeletal figure lurking just beyond the firelight, its eyes glowing with a sinister light. Panic set in as the figure seemed to vanish into the shadows, only to reappear in different spots, closer each time. The group decided to pack up and leave immediately. As they hurriedly gathered their belongings, the creature let out a blood-curdling scream that echoed through the forest, freezing them in their tracks. They fled in terror, leaving some of their gear behind. The post generated significant discussion and engagement, with many users expressing their own fears and fascination with the Wendigo legend. On the Unexplained Mysteries forum, an individual known as Wisconsin Hiker shared an eerie encounter while hiking in northern Wisconsin. The hike had been uneventful until dusk began to settle over the forest. As the twilight deepened, an unsettling stillness took hold. The hiker described feeling watched, the hairs on the back of their necks standing up as they pressed on along the trail. Then, in the fading light, they saw it. A tall, emaciated figure standing among the trees. Its eyes glowed faintly in the dimness, creating an eerie, haunting presence. The creature was eerily silent, its gaunt form barely moving as if it were studying the hiker. Paralyzed by fear, the hiker could only stare back, the cold of the encroaching night seeping into their bones. Finally, the figure began to move, its motions slow and deliberate, almost ghostly. The hiker snapped out of their trance and bolted back down the trail, not daring to look back. They shared their experience on the forum, adding to the collection of modern sightings and highlighting the geographic spread of the Wendigo legend. The post resonated with many, reflecting the ongoing fear and intrigue surrounding these eerie encounters. These internet anecdotes, though varied in their details, share a common thread of fear and fascination. They add to the modern dimension of the Wendigo legend, reminding us that some horrors continue to lurk in the shadows, waiting to be discovered. The Wendigo legend has traversed time, from the haunting tales of the Algonquian tribes to modern-day encounters that defy explanation. We've journeyed through chilling historical accounts like the Swift Runner case, delved into the eerie characteristics and transformations that define the Wendigo, and listened to contemporary stories that send shivers down our spines. This malevolent spirit, with its skeletal frame and glowing eyes, continues to lurk in the shadows, a reminder of the thin line between humanity and monstrosity. The Wendigo's legacy endures, a potent symbol of fear and the consequences of succumbing to our darkest impulses. As we turn off the lights and try to sleep tonight, let us remember, some legends are born from the deepest fears of the human soul and refuse to die. The Wendigo waits, hungry and ever watchful, in the darkest corners of our minds and the deepest forests of our world.